Thank you. Today's really important for me. I feel really proud to be able to support the dialogue. Western Sydney's been a really important framework for my career, 25 plus years. I've come to the decision that I don't actually say how many years now, it's just the plus. It's really important, and I want to thank also for the article today. I think that was in the newspaper around Western Sydney and more metro. I really am a proud supporter of that. I live near Tallawong. I love the station. It's time to get the rest of it done. I've worked on Outer Sydney Orbital and all of those projects, and I really would love to see more happening. So keep going and keep challenging that. Today, we have the subject of local solutions to a national crisis, and we want to talk about how Greater Western Sydney can answer the housing call. And I want to introduce a really diverse panel today, which I'm really proud. I've been talking to them this week. They're really enthusiastic. They're at the forefront of what's really going on in Sydney, particularly Western Sydney. Today, I'd like to introduce Aras Labutis. He's our Head of Urban Transformations at Coronation Property Group. So I don't know where he is. He might be making his way up. Great. Scott Langford, the CEO of Housing Australia. Rebecca Pinkstone from Homes New South Wales. She's our Chief Executive. And Alex Wendler, the CEO of Landcom. Please give him a round. So I think it's fair to say that there's been a great deal of enthusiasm from government to really sort of answer the call to housing. It's happening at all fronts. And I think today I want to ask some questions that are really getting into the nuts and bolts of how we actually get it done. We've set the task, and now we're at the coalface. Now we're getting at the forefront of, making things happen. So welcome. So I'm going to ask some questions. We've got some Slido things that are pop up, so I'm going to mix it up. So I know I gave you some questions earlier this week, so there might be some pop ones come up as well, so please be ready. So I'm going to start with Alex. Landcom has been a well-regarded company. Some of you in this room I'm looking at right now, Nicole. And I've worked on a number of those projects, and some of them were fantastic, so like Penrith North and also Bungarraby. And I live in the Ponds, and I really appreciate the great work that was done by Landcom. But it was a time that didn't happen, and it went to urban growth, and you're now back. And I feel like the challenge now is how to make Landcom great again, not to use Trump too much, but So the government's imperative now is get it done, and get it done not just for housing, but how is Landcom also doing it in a way that's going to create those great new places again?
Yes, good morning everybody, and thank you for the question. And you're right, Amanda, it's a new era for Landcom. And with the help of our shareholder, the New South Wales government, we are going through a very important transformation. And it's a transformation that is reflected in the fact that we got, over the last 2 years, more than 800 million of more capital, that we are widening our skill set and our product suite to really address the supply crisis that Minister O'Neill just mentioned. And talking about BTR, build to rent, we actually as well in that, offering that as well in the regions, but as well for essential workers here now in Sydney. And we're making very good progress. So, and as well, what we're doing is we're extending our capabilities, so to as well go to build form. So it means we are not only a land developer, but when needed and if our partners require that from us, we can as well build. And this is really important for our work with the CHP, because there is a lot of pressure on them, and we want to make sure that we can work with them to help them develop affordable housing. And yes, you mentioned about the projects that we did in the past, and yes, the Ponds and as well Thornton are great projects that were really ahead of their time. And this is what we're trying to do now as well, to just look into the future and go, be ahead of the time. We are very active in acquiring land, and we are very proud that and very happy that we acquired Glenfield, a big piece of land next to the station from the Department of Education. And what we want to turn this into is really a showcase for density done well, where we can show that where we create a community that's walkable, where we create a community that is not car dependent, where we have public amenity and as local amenity, and in particular public open space, because this is really what makes the Ponds unique and Thornton unique. But we want to really get to the next level of that. But just talking about the the challenges that we have, just to end on this. There was a bit of a chat about the Troika yesterday. I want to just use the term for something else, just about the Troika of challenges, because Minister O'Neill already mentioned the high construction costs. That is true. But as well, what we see in Greater Western Sydney is land values that are very, very high, and this is made worse by fragmentation.
Yep.
So therefore, fragmentation of ownership. And I think the last of the Troika problems is the question, the problem with infrastructure and utilities. So at the table yesterday, we had a discussion about sewer and water infrastructure and how this is holding back. I was sitting next to another developer. So this is really something that we should possibly discuss a bit further. And maybe just to seeing Scott there, on the HAF, I think the one issue, and I know you haven't designed it, but
Hey, I get to ask the questions here, not you, but you know.
Yeah, Alex, hang on, you don't get to ask the questions.
No, that's right. But maybe just a thought. No, it's not a question. But it's really have these. We talked about the government, the federal government you're supporting. So have the tools that we have designed for the current problem, being designed for the problem, in particular the high construction prices.
Sure.
That's all I say for this now.
Very good. Aras, I'm going to ask you a question. It's been a time since, if anyone knows me, I've been doing rezonings for a little while. I've come back into DLE land and we're working on a project, I know, and I'll declare that now, but it's quite evident that there's everything that's required and it seems to have escalated quite a considerable amount. The requirements for social impact assessments, BTR, design excellent competitions, the list goes on. Plus added contributions, it's just, you know, and the expectation seems to be more and more. My thinking is that, you know, is perfection enemy of the good? We really have a mission to deliver housing. So my question to you, I suppose, is what do we stop doing? What do we prioritise, or how do we do it better so we can actually achieve what we set out to do without getting bogged down in too much of everything?
Where to start?
We only have limited time.
Yeah. And using another Troika reference, I think you've got pre-DA, DA and post-DA. And each one of those processes is extended significantly. I started in planning 20 years ago. And right now is the worst I've seen it in my career in terms of the time it takes to get things done. And so it's refreshing to hear Minister O'Neill reference you could grab 20 or 30 different things along the way and you could get rid of those and start delayering some things. Because I think we're in a situation where we keep getting new regulation piled on things, and some of it's for good reason, and some of it served its purpose. Of course, we want to lift the bar, we want to build quality, we want good design, we want all those things and good outcomes. But at the same time, you can't overload it so much that it becomes cost prohibitive when you've already got supply chain issues, construction price increases that are really prohibitive, particularly west of Parramatta. And that's evident through the lack of cranes in the sky. They're just not there. We're seeing the worst approvals recently in, I think, forever, which is really concerning given there's such a big push to try and get projects moving forward. So what can we start doing? We can start, I think, trying to speed up those processes. So, and actually, Matt, this is one of the projects we're working on. In Chatswood, we've got an affordable housing project. We're utilising the housing SEP incentives. We lodged our CEAs in July, got them out a couple of days later, but it took us 5 months to get a design competition waiver. We'd already done a design competition to be able to lodge our DA. And that's just wasted time, completely wasted time in that DA process. Through the DA process, there's obviously a whole bunch of things that come into play. You've got different review panels. You end up going back to the design review panel. You might go back a couple of times. And all those things sort of add to that process. But then post-DA, what's happening now is you've got these significant lead times, particularly for utilities infrastructure. We've had a couple of projects where it's taken us 18 to 24 months just to get an approval for a Sydney water pipe to start things. So you're seeing the end-to-end process for projects take 10 plus years, and using a Parramatta example, 8 Phillip Street, great project. It's 360 apartments. I started working on that in 2013, and we will be finished in about 18 months.
Yeah.
So getting 300 and something apartments to market has taken over a decade. And it's a project that I think it's fair to say everyone's behind. We've got a 260-room QT hotel going in as well, Parramatta's first 5-star hotel. Everyone loves the project. Why does it take that long to get something like that to market? So we've got to start looking at the opportunities to try and remove some of these regulations that obviously won't decrease quality, especially when you've got great consultants involved, to try and speed up these processes. And then on the other hand, you've of course got the skills issues. So there are a lot of subcontractors that are leaving the industry at the moment. 110,000 subcontractors leave the industry every year, and that's replaced by only 53,000. So again, in a time where we're supposed to be delivering the most housing we've ever delivered before, we've got this big shortfall in skills in the industry. And that can be solved by both some grassroots skills, obviously, for bringing the younger people up through the system and encouraging young people to get involved in these trades, and also with some targeted immigration for some of those skills as well. Right. But I think there's a big problem with some of the smaller groups leaving the industry because there's so much backroom paperwork and things that are now required that they just can't handle, particularly when they're small.
So we need to liberate the system a little bit more for everybody to be part of it, not just certain tiers of constructors.
Absolutely. It can't just be the bigger players. You need to accommodate all of those, even sole traders as well. Okay. I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
Well, I'm going to wrap you up otherwise. I'm going to give you the wrap-up time. Rebecca, you've just, not just, $6.6 billion worth of funding. It's really a commitment, I think, that's tangible, that the government really wants things to happen, and it's really refreshing. I feel like LAC has sort of been on its own. Do what you can, divest what you have and get on with it. Now it's actually committed funding. But unfortunately, I think when I look at some of those past projects, they haven't always landed very well, they haven't gone so great. What are the lessons learned out of some of those projects? Like, say, for instance, Chalopia, and now your mission is not just this much, but this much housing in such a short time. What's Homes New South Wales going to do to really step in and step up?
Yeah, well, I think the major issue is that there's been, up until this point, there hasn't been any capital contribution from the New South Wales government. And so when you're trying to deliver social or affordable housing, it's subsidised housing and you need a subsidy. And the way that we previously had tried to structure those deals was that we were trying to take the land value in effect as a subsidy, and surprise, surprise, that means that you can't deliver as much social and affordable housing on those sites. So they were very particular. They were part of a strategy of government, but times have changed. We have a new government and we have a new agenda, which firmly places the development of social and affordable housing as a government responsibility. And of course, we can't do that alone. We need to do that in partnership with industry and with community housing providers. So the money helps. It won't help address all of the other issues that I'm sure we're going to talk about today in terms of housing and construction costs and labour market issues and access to finance, but it does help. And so I think that when we're reflecting on some of those projects, particularly in Western Sydney, we need to be realistic about where government steps in and where that subsidy plays a part. There's been a number of very successful projects, though, that have emerged over the last decade, in particular Bonnyrigg in partnership with St George and Traders in Purple. There's some really good examples of how government can partner with industry to deliver more homes, and now we have some money to shift the dial and bring that feasibility into areas that perhaps we haven't been able to have that feasibility before.
Great. Scott, you're on the front for funding for HAF and the NAF. There's been a bit of criticism, I suppose, in the timeliness of some of the funding that's come out. My question to you, I suppose, is how is it going to be better for the further rounds? And if someone's applying for that funding in those further rounds, what have they got to do to make it really good for you to go, yes, give me the money?
Well, look, thanks for the question. It's, I think firstly it's important to say what Housing Australia does in the respect of our role in getting housing production. So we have to partner with the market to deliver outcomes, and how we do that and how efficiently we do that is really crucial, because at the end of the day what we do is deploy capital in various forms, and there's been a lot of success for that historically in the way the organisation's operated. supporting currently 3,800 homes in construction through other programs, 58,000 first home buyers, home buyers supported last year, including 1 in 3 first home buyers through the Home Guarantee Scheme. With HAF, it's a brand new program that's got a 5-year target of 40,000 units to enter construction, which when combined with the National Housing Accord facility. And so at the outset of the program, it was important to go to market with deliberately broad parameters, and also on the basis that if we think about the housing crisis, as the Minister would talk about, well, think about it like the house is on fire. You don't try and make sure you've got the hose fully rolled out and all the kinks ironed out before you go to market. You unroll the hose and you start the flow of funds, and it will take a little bit of time, particularly in a context where you are needing to explore what innovation the market can bring. And that was very deliberate in the design of round 1, and I think there's a view that it has taken a little while. What I'd say is it has taken exactly as long as Housing Australia said it would take, but of course it's not quick enough overall in the context of the crisis we're in. I would emphasise to anyone in the room that's working for an applicant that's currently working with us, please go away from this wonderful conference and get back on the tools and get on the contract, because the most important thing we can do is get delivery out of round 1, and that is a huge focus for us at the moment. But for a return to that in terms of context and what are we going to do differently in future, look, we've learned a lot from round 1, and particularly the innovation of the market. It needs a lot of innovation in both the capital solution but also in the way people have brought together solutions, and we are thinking a lot about the way we partner with all the various participants, and particularly the role of state and territory governments, and how we work more closely to draw on their expertise and data sets. I think in future it's likely that we'll look at more targeted allocations and signalling to market what the priorities are so that people can be more targeted in their responses to us. That will allow us to speed up some of the processes along the way. But again, back to context, I mean, this is standing up what the first round will be in the order of $6 to $9 billion being invested in housing, and that's the first of a number of rounds. So it is, of course, important that for both participants who have to negotiate those arrangements that will hold for 25 years and for the Commonwealth in deploying capital, that those are done in really considered and appropriate ways. So what we won't be doing is forgoing good process that makes sure we're getting both value for money and best impact. What we absolutely will do is provide as much clarity and targeting as possible, because what we want to do is speed up and improve the flows of funds as we move on from round 1.
Great. I'm going to ask a broader question, and probably directed to Aras to start with. Todd's, we've got everything going on at the moment. I feel like it's a fiesta of policy initiatives, and there's so many directions. It's a bit of a choose your own adventure going on as well. My question, I suppose, is what else should the government be doing? Because those are platforms, but we need to be thinking about how to deliver and getting those things actually happening. What should the government be doing with either that or with the implementation, more like?
So I think the Todd SEP outcomes have been mixed. A great example, using an example on the ground, we have a site in St Leonards that we recently acquired. We were moving ahead to utilise the housing SEP incentives there. We want to deliver the affordable housing as part of a BTR product. And then 2 things have come into play. Firstly, the housing SEP has been switched off. So probably one of the most successful pieces of policy that's come out in the last number of years has been turned off. So a site that could deliver 500 homes now can deliver 350 homes. So that's a huge difference. And previously what could deliver 75 affordable housing homes is now 10 affordable homes. On top of that, the affordable housing, it looks like, needs to be dedicated. Now that doesn't work in a BTR asset. You can't have a stratum carved out of that BTR. We want to actually deliver the affordable housing. We've partnered with Tier 1 CHPs to do that on a number of our sites. But we want to have that in our pool of our BTR products. So it'll be fully managed by the Tier 1 CHP. It'll be affordable housing either for the 15-year period or in perpetuity. We look at both of those. But you can't have that carved out of the BTR asset class. Now, I appreciate those policies have come out fairly quickly, and they'll probably, again, like you said, Scott, the kinks in the hose need to be ironed out. But I think there's a few things there that might just hold up the fast delivery of housing, particularly in the housing accord period. So I think we need to look at how we can change those things fairly rapidly, and not through a lengthy rezoning process where, it takes 12 months to change something. It should be more stroke of the pen sort of thing.
Okay. We've got some questions from Slido, which I'm going to put to the panel. Alex, if you had one thing that you could change with the three tiers of government and how it could help housing in Western Sydney, what would you do?
Yeah, we heard today from the Minister that there is a meeting of minds between the federal government and the state government. I think where we need to push harder is on local level. And I know that a lot of mayors are here, but what our experience is really that the community has not fully bought in that we have a crisis. And this is on all of us, but as well on the representatives on local level to push harder, because a number of the delays, Aras, that you're talking about are really coming as well from a fear about community backlash and what it does to in our representative democracy as well. So I think that narrative has to be much stronger. The Premier is leading that, and I'm very, very happy to see that. I think we all are. But it's on us to be sitting here, on people in this room, but as well on councillors to just do the hard work on the street. We have a very small development in Queenscliff, which is not in Western Sydney, it's North Manly, but it has taken years and years and years because people were afraid about affordable housing in their street.
Yeah.
And that is something that I can tell you many more examples.
Great. One of the questions that's come up, and I'm going to ask Scott this and maybe to the panel more broadly, because it's quite a broad question. It says Southwest local government areas are largely unconnected to the 5.2 billion airport. I don't know about the numbers, I'll just verify that. With significant growth expected, it seems councils are ready, industry is ready. How do we get government ready right now to deliver? And maybe part of that question is connections to Sydney Water, to getting other things happening, the fundamentals. Open it to the panel. Alex and Scott?
Look, I'll leave questions of state infrastructure. I'm learning where the boundaries sit in terms of our responsibilities. But look, what I would say is that I think that coordination is really important, and that's about maximising the impact that limited dollars in the system can have. Beck, I'm interested in how Homes New South Wales is thinking about this and the way you're deploying the funds you've got. But from a Commonwealth level and sort of from Housing Australia's perspective, as we're contemplating future ways of prioritising our investments, it will be some of those factors, because what we want to see is leverage in the system that comes from all three levels of government having potentially contributions into projects, or certainly ways that can make the flow much more efficient, and that's going to be incredibly important. So I think it's going to be those overlays, and a lot of that is going to be led by the state lens that can get applied to think about that real on-the-ground coordination.
I mean, I think there is actually some really good work going on, and the Western Sydney Planning Partnership, we're working with local governments in Western Sydney to look at the contributions that they're getting through affordable housing and how we can better coordinate that as a group. Because let's be real, every tier of government wants to take credit for what they do. And a lot of the time, the contributions that you get locally in an LGA aren't enough to really shift the dial. So the work that's going on in Western Sydney actually, I think, is leading in the country in terms of collaboration. How can we bring those contributions together? How can we work with Homes New South Wales directly in terms of the capital stack that we bring to new supply? Those are the things we need to do, practically get together and say, we're going to look at the benefit of this community as a whole. We have a pipeline of over 2,000 properties in this area at the moment. We have money. It is much better for us to work with councils and try and maximise that money to get more social and affordable housing on the ground than working individually on separate projects. So there is really great work happening in Western Sydney, and we need to build on that.
I suppose one of the questions that's been raised is what innovative methods or policies can we apply from overseas examples to help, with the housing crisis and the cause, and finding new ways of doing things. Alex, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so one thing that doesn't sound so innovative, but I think that actually it would make a difference is, and a number of us went to London to the tours. There were 2 different tours over the years, And we learned about inclusionary zoning, but coming with grants. And this is what I wanted to say at the first point about being a bit freer about how the money that is available can be injected into projects. And looking at Scott now, right? Because talking to CHPs, we all, and you are coming from that world, understand how fast grants can work, in particular in a moment where feasibilities don't work because of higher construction costs. And projects like in the 25-year stream over that just bridges the gap between market and affordable rents is not going to cut it. So I think that's one of the things. So we and Scott was in London too with us a few years ago, and Aras was with me there this year. That's one thing. And I think the other one that I think everybody is talking about is modern methods of construction, right? Like a few years ago when I went to conferences, everybody was talking about, we just founded a BTR company, and everybody was talking about BTR, and now wherever you go, everybody gives you a kind of a business card about this new venture they have. We have them stacking up, but we're actually looking at them and visiting factories and checking that out. Bit too early to tell which one will be successful, but that's obviously something that is at the top of mind.
Great. We're really nearly at time. What I'm going to
Can I just briefly comment on
I was going to say,
and I think Beck wants to say so as well, just in particularly in relation to the housing, the continuity of funding and grant. I mean, I think it's a really good example from overseas. One of the great challenges of the housing system here, particularly for social and affordable housing, has been the short-lived nature of programs and interventions, and often a lack of understanding that these things take time to stand up and produce outcomes. So governments cop criticism when there is an early delivery, when in fact what you need to do is smooth it over a period of time and get replicable and dependable sources of capital that are available. And we've seen that in the US, the low-income housing tax credit, 1.2 million homes produced out of that. You see it in the UK. I think that's why something like the Housing Australia Future Fund is so important, because it's a perpetual source of capital. And it's why we need to continue to push for the sort of capital programs that can give market certainty. That will go a long way to getting the efficiencies and some of the dependability that you talk about in terms of the market experience for people to be able to efficiently put things together year in, year out, if you know there are sources of grant or other interventions coming in every single year. So incredibly important, and I think it's also one of the real benefits that HAF can bring as it continues through a 5-year program and hopefully beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree with that. It's around pipeline clarity, strategic partnering and alliances. Not everyone can deliver everything. We need to get better at procuring for a pipeline, so that is better for everyone. It's better for the builders, the developers, the trades, the community housing providers, the finance companies who are coming together, and they understand that pipeline and where the funding flows are moving through. It's also critically important if we're really going to leverage MMC. So, we have had some fantastic work on the pattern book. Homes will be using the pattern book, and we will be linking that to modern methods of construction to make sure that we can deliver in a more cost-effective way. All of the elements need to work together over time. And the major issue that we've had in Australia has been a lack of policy and funding clarity for industry, for community housing providers. I think we're at a shifting point now. We've got HAF. Whatever we think of HAF, it is an institutional vehicle over time that we need in Australia. And now it's up to the states and territories to work alongside that and local government to get on board so that we can have that clarity. That's the only way we will shift the dial.
Great. I'm going to ask one question because we're sort of running out of time for each of one of you. We know the challenges, I think, for housing, so let's not labour on that. If there was one thing you could change, short answer, either in the planning system, the process, the procurement, whatever it is, in the end-to-end to getting housing done in Western Sydney, what would it be? Wish list.
Yeah, Beck's whispering my ear, more money.
More money, great.
I mean, that's absolutely... Look, I think that some of the architecture is starting to emerge. The ambition of the National Housing Accord is to get better coordination, and I don't think we ever get to a point where there is a single answer. There isn't. There is nowhere, anywhere in the world where there is a single answer to production of housing to meet demand. Housing supply is inelastic. So coordination, and I think everyone leaning into that, so that every part of the system can be used as efficiently as possible, reducing the leakage that goes to all of the uncertainties, to the mispricing of risk because it's not aligned. That level of coordination, that's the thing we've got to get to.
Yeah, I think that's important. Obviously, I run the State Housing Authority. My view is that we need a bipartisan commitment to the delivery of social and affordable homes over time. We need a social licence that says government has a responsibility to provide housing for our community, and it will underwrite that part of the industry and provide clarity and certainty over time. We have learnt from all of the jurisdictions that when the state steps out of housing, the crisis is worse. So we need government to step to the fore, to say that it's there, that we're over the long term. We believe that social and affordable housing is social infrastructure. It's infrastructure for our communities, and government has a responsibility to deliver that, irrespective of who's in power.
Very hard to choose one, but I think the infrastructure piece is a big one. You've got a lot of situations in Western Sydney where the cost of enabling infrastructure is more than the underlying land value. So looking how to tap into the federal and state funding to activate particularly scale projects in Western Sydney is really critical. But there are many other things that you can do as well.
Yeah, it is hard to choose one, but the one that I would like to put at the top of the list is the skills problem that we have here, because that is at the heart of a lot of things that we are discussing, right? So, it is unfortunately a political question as well, but it's a question that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we will be continuously talking about problems in infrastructure, problems in housing, and problems everywhere.
Great. I think we're at time. I wanted to thank you, the panel, for all the insights, and I hope that's been valuable for everybody. Thank you.